Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming to our concert for a cooler climate. I'm Chris Anderson from Earth Matters, and we have a very warm day here today, and we have to thank Mother Earth for giving us this beautiful day. So, David Feurzeig has come up with this idea for going to every town in Vermont to perform for a cooler climate. And he's going to get up after I'm done to talk about how he came up with this idea and his intentions and what he was thinking about for doing these concerts. I also want to thank Southern Vermont Art Center for agreeing to host us. Here we are in this beautiful pavilion, and they have been so helpful setting it up for us today and helping us with the advertising and just organizing everything for us. So that was, it's been very helpful. And our other performers. We have Maxine Linehan today, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with her music and have been to her concerts, but maybe some of you, like me, have not. So this is a great opportunity for us to hear her musicianship. And then we have some very special guest singers today, area students and their teacher, Anne DeLevo. Annie will be guiding them in their song today. And they're from Manchester Elementary and Middle School, Dorset School, Floodbrook School in Londonderry, Maple Street School, and Red Fox Community School. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this, and I want to thank your families for bringing it. Now, Annie is the teacher of these students, but she also was one of the founding members of Earth Matters. And so we have her to thank for us being here today and for the work that we've been doing for the past 6 years. And she was also the one who said, we have to do this concert. This would be a great opportunity for us. And so I know many of you here, but some of you I don't. And that means I haven't seen you at some of the other Earth Matters events. We are the local climate and environmental justice group in the North Shire. And we have about more than 200 members from all the towns in the area. We have been advocating for solutions to slow down the heating of our planet. Much of the carbon that's up in the air, in the atmosphere, used to be in the ground and needs to be returned to the ground. The book Drawdown, which was edited by Paul Hawkins, has 100 solutions to help us do that. We need to change the ways we generate our electricity, heat our homes, power our cars, grow our food, manage our forests, and use Earth's limited resources. We need to change how we care for our planet. So over the years, we have been working on legislation that would help us achieve some of these sometimes expensive things that we need to do to change our lives. And today, we're starting a new campaign to let people know of the monies that are available from the Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure law. And so we have a lot of handouts outside on ways that people can get rebates or tax credits when they make some of these changes. Because not all of us can afford to buy new heating systems, weatherize our homes, or get electric vehicles. So we need to make sure that everyone is included and can achieve these goals. Over the years, Earth Matters has organized quite a few events. We've been at the Roundabout multiple times, often celebrating Earth Day. In 2019, we organized the Global Climate Strike in Manchester. And perhaps 400 people, perhaps some of you, were at that rally at the Factory Point Town Green. I'm getting very thirsty. to hear stories and testify about how the changing climate has affected them. We have had campaigns to urge people to buy local food, support regenerative agriculture and organic farmers, reduce pesticide use, and rethink your lawn for insects and birds, as well as protect our mature standing trees, because we need to regain the biodiversity our earth has lost. Currently, many of us are working at the Manchester Community Garden. We have 3 plots there where we're growing food for the community food cupboard and for Grateful Hearts. And this past legislative session, we were active in trying to get the legislature and the governor to sign some of the bills that we need to have to help Vermont achieve a cooler climate. So any donations you make today will be going on to continue, allow us to continue on with this work. So some housekeeping. If you have a cell phone on you, please turn it off or silence it. I forgot to do mine. The restrooms, you can go right back out the door that you came through, or you can go up the steps and go into the glass lobby, and they're down that hallway to the left. There won't be any intermission, but we'd love to have you join us for conversation with some of our musicians here today, including David, and to have cool drinks and homemade cookies out in the lobby. And don't forget to look at all the materials that we have on our tables. And so now, David is going to carry on from here. Thank you.
Thank you for that lovely introduction. And I'm just going to jump right into the first piece because talking makes me nervous. Thank you. So I have a day job. I don't primarily earn my living by performing. I teach at the University of Vermont. But I do get invited occasionally to gigs around the country and sometimes abroad. But a few years ago, I stopped flying out of environmental concerns, which makes it more than a little inconvenient in our modern setup to go any distance at all. So I was having to decline these invitations. Then COVID happened, and nobody played anyway. So as the lockdown sort of began to ease and people were playing again, I came up with the idea of sort of satisfying an ambition we'd had anyway since moving to Vermont, of visiting every town in Vermont. And I thought, I'll play a concert in every town in Vermont. I won't have to go very far. We can get to every town in our solar-powered electric vehicle. And I won't run out of concerts anytime soon. There's 252 of them to play. But also there was a sort of interesting fringe benefit from this, because when I did stop flying, unlike right now, I didn't tell anybody, because nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to hear about the oh-so-virtuous personal choices you've made. And honestly, there's another level, too, where nobody really wants to hear from a real live person in front of them that they think that the situation is so dire that we may have to make some significant and maybe inconvenient lifestyle changes. So I kept quiet about it. But as I began to read more and more about the sort of sociology of social change, I learned that, like, literally the most important thing you can do in the face of any, system-wide problem that you need to address is you have to talk about it. And in a strange sort of way, there's something kind of oddly egotistical about making personal changes and then thinking that you're done, right? Because of course, none of us can have any impact on something this monumental by ourselves. So talking about it is actually the most important thing. And by playing these concerts, I now have a convenient excuse to tell everyone, hey look, I'm not flying. And maybe we can all think about, some of the easier and some of the less easier things that we all can do individually, but also that we all need to do collectively, and that, whatever you do, to be sure that you're talking about this and talking about everything that we need to do to address, forces that are enormously more powerful than any of us individually, from Shell Oil to the Department of the Interior or whatever it is. So that's how I got the idea to do this. And one of the ideas we came up with early on was that in each town, I should do something, a piece or two, with local musicians, residents of the actual town in question. And these have ranged from young student musicians to professionals with national and sometimes international followings. And today we get both. So with that, I'm going to let Annie come up and introduce the local vocals.
So I just wanted to say a few words. I'm really not going to be very long at all, but I just wanted to introduce you to this wonderful group, which we decided just now that they're called the local vocals. I was joking with David about what we could call them. And I said jokingly, local vocals, but actually I think that's a good name. What do you think? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
It will be ironic when you become world famous.
Exactly. Going on. So this is Katie McNeil from MEMS, and Luna Rasso from Clubbrook School, Ella Parks from Red Fox School, Peyton Haller from Maple Street School, Hudson Fain from Dorset School, and Gabriel at the end there, Gabriel Koss from Red Fox School. They're all my students, all my vocal students, except Gabriel, who is actually Maxine's son, and he agreed to sing with us today. So thank you very much, Gabriel. He's actually a piano student of mine. He's very good. Okay, and thank you so much, David, for putting on this wonderful concert. I am so looking forward to his playing later on. We're going to be doing Colors of the Wind from the film Pocahontas, the Walt Disney film, Pocahontas. And David is very kindly accompanying us.
You think I'm an ignorant savage, and you've been so many places, I guess it must be so, but still I cannot see if the savage one is me. How can there be so much that you don't know? You don't know. You think you own whatever land you land on. The earth is just a dead thing you can claim. But I know every rock and tree and creature has a life, has a spirit, has a name. You think the only people who are people are the people who look and think like you. But if you walk the footsteps of a stranger, you'll learn things you never knew, you never knew. Have you ever heard a wolf cry to the blue corn moon? Or wrestling walked out while he grinned? Can you sing with all the voices of the mountain? Can you paint with all the colors of the wind? Can you paint with all the colors of the wind? Come run the hidden pine trails of the forest. Come taste the sun-sweet berries of the earth. Come roll in all bridges all around you, and for once never wonder what they were. The rainstorm and the river are my brothers. The heron and the otter are my friends. Then we are all connected to each other in a circle, in a hoop that never ends. How high does a sycamore grow? If you cut it down, then you'll never know. And you'll never hear the wolf cry to the blue corn moon, for whether we are white or copper skin, we need to sing with all the voices of the mountain, need to paint with all the colors of the wind. You can own the earth and still all you'll own is earth until you can paint with all the colors of the wind.
Maxine Linehan. She's well known to folk who live in Manchester. She's also well known all over the world. She has made albums. She's got a very successful career, and we are so happy and privileged to have her living in our community. She is very, very talented and very gracious to have agreed to do this concert for us today. So we're absolutely delighted to have her on stage. Maxine Linehan.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's lovely to be here. I also want to say a special thank you to David and Anne and Chris and everyone who is talking about this important subject. And I'm happy to be able to lend my voice today. I'm just going to sing two of my favorite songs. I often don't get to just pick my favorite songs and sing them randomly, so I'm going to do that today. The first song is, it's the title song from a movie you might have heard of called The Sound of Music. And that movie and the show have played a huge role in influencing me as a performer. In fact, my first professional acting job, I was not much older than some of the kids who were up here singing today when I played Louisa Von Trapp in an Irish production of The Sound of Music. And I went on to play Maria a number of times, and it's a very, very special movie to me. But it wasn't until I moved to Vermont that I learned the Von Trapps relocated here, because it reminded them of their beautiful country, Austria. So I think The Sound of Music in Vermont now has a very special connection, and there's nothing lovelier than being out in the green, spinning around, singing "The Hills Are Alive." The hills are alive today, and as always, when I sing this song, I dedicate this to my beautiful mom, who is listening somewhere. My day in the hills has come to an end. I know a star has come out to tell me it's time to go. But deep in the dark green shadows are voices that urge me to stay. So I pause and I wait and I listen for one more sound, for one more lovely thing that the hills might say. The hills are alive with the sound of music, with songs they have sung for 1,000 years. The hills fill my heart with the sound of music. My heart wants to sing every song it hears. My heart wants to beat like the wings of the birds that rise from the lake to the trees. My heart wants to sigh like a chime that flies from a church on a breeze, to laugh like a brook when it trips and falls over stones on its way, to sing through the night like a lark who is learning to pray. I go to the hills when my heart is lonely. I know I will hear what I've heard before. My heart will be blessed with the sound of music, and I'll sing once more. Thank you. And now for something completely different. This song is by Lady Gaga. It is from the movie A Star is Born. This is Shallow. Tell me something, girl. Are you happy in this modern world? Or do you need more? Is there something else you're searching for? I'm falling. In all the good times I find myself longing for change. And in the bad times I feel myself
Tell me something, boy. Aren't you tired trying to fill that void? Or do you need more? Ain't it hard keeping it so hardcore? I'm falling. In all the good times I find myself longing for change, and in the bad times I fear myself. I'm off the deep end, watch as I dive in. I'll never beat the ground. Crash through the surface where they can't hurt us. We're far from the shallow now. In the shallow, shallow. In the shallow, shallow. In the shallow, shallow. We're far from the shallow now. Oh, 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 I'm off the deep end, watch as I dive in. I'll never beat the ground. Crash through the surface where they can't hurt us. We're far from the shallow now. In the shallow, shallow. In the shallow, shallow. In the shallow, shallow. We're far from the shallow now.
I was just talking with Anne Olivo before the concert, and she mentioned how some people sent their regrets that they couldn't come to the concert because they were entertaining this afternoon, which Maxine is also doing, but somehow she managed to, as they say, park and bark, and then is going to take care of her guests. So people have been enormously generous. In particular, I want to thank, well, there's so many people. I want to thank, again, the Southern Vermont's Arts Center for hosting this and being so generous with the facilities. And also for helping to promote the event, as Anne mentioned. She herself did a significant amount for that, as I'm sure the attraction of Maxine did. But I believe we have, by perhaps a handful or two, we have now exceeded our prior maximum, so you are our largest crowd so far on this still young tour. And yeah, so I want to particularly also thank Anne Olivo, who initiated the concert here, but also did more than that. So as we go around the state, and I'll do this now, we say, hey, if you know good places to play in the area, please let us know, because we figure a lot of this out by crowdsourcing. Anne did more than that. She sort of said, oh, I can tell you where to play in Bennington County, and came up with like a dozen towns where she had the recommendations of where the good pianos were and where the energetic communities were. So that's been just an enormous help. So when Anne said, oh, and I would love it if you could play some Bartók, I have to say yes. So I'm going to play a set of folk song arrangements by Bartók. As you may know, Bartók, Hungarian composer, his sort of trademark, what distinguished him in his innovative path in 20th century music, was to incorporate the folk music of his region, primarily, into a sort of concert music context. But unlike earlier people who had done this, he didn't try to tone it down and say, here's a nice sort of, country melody, I'm going to smooth it out and put some nice, pretty, typical progressions, chords behind it. Instead, he said, what is this melody really trying to do? And sort of trying to retain that folk character and energy and its own sort of integrity, even while adapting it for a different context. So that was kind of his MO. And the way that this all began was, as a very young man, he was living in Hungary as an ethnic Hungarian, but Hungary was at that point part of the Austrian Empire. And the Austrian culture was very much imposed at every level on all of the empire. So Bartók, teaching at the conservatory in Budapest, the capital of Hungary, was required to teach in German, not in Hungarian. And he was required to wear Western dress and not typical Hungarian costume and things like this. So there was a sort of both political and cultural kind of rebellion against this. And one of the ways that Bartók was resisting was to celebrate, ethnic Hungarian things. So where he wore, in defiance of the rules, he wore Hungarian clothes and he spoke Hungarian. And he went out into the country with his little phonograph recorder and said, I'm going to go discover the true, authentic Hungarian music out in the country where people are still honest and Hungarian. He went to do that, but the thing is, in that part of the world, right, in the Balkans, there's just this crazy quilt of ethnicities, right? So he couldn't go out even into a single village. And there might be some Hungarians, but there would also be Romanians, and maybe Bulgarians, and maybe Roma, and maybe some Jewish, and some Bulgarian, and some Albanian, and Macedonian, and so he couldn't help hearing this other music, and he decided that it was all fantastic. And while he remained a Hungarian patriot, he sort of quickly dropped this sort of cultural patriotism and just said, folk music is great, all kinds of folk music. And as we face, the climate crisis, I think about, all the stories of how people have dealt with adversity. So, and it's funny, these are really short pieces. I'm probably talking longer than the pieces are going to be, but I want to say one other thing, which is that, so he became obsessed with collecting folk music of all kinds, recording it, transcribing it, studying it, and also using it in his music. And at the end of World War I, what we think of as the end of World War I, the war actually continued in Hungary as just after the armistice was signed, Romania invaded Hungary. And for the next year, Romania and Hungary were still at war. And at one point, the Romanian army had advanced into Budapest, where Bartók lived, and they had requisitioned his house. So Romanian soldiers were staying with Bartók and his family, eating his food, sleeping in his bed. And that sounds like a very unhappy situation, right? But what Bartók did was he would come down in the evenings, people would eat, he would put out a bottle of wine, take out his Edison recorder, and then ask the assembled young men with machine guns in his house, so you boys know any Romanian songs? And that's actually, these settings were written right at that time. So World War I and occupying soldiers did not stop Bartók from celebrating the glorious culture. So these are the 6 Romanian dances as arranged by Bartók. So one of the things that Bartok was fascinated by in that part of the world is in the Romanian music, and particularly in the Bulgarian music, there are often these pieces that have unusual meters with unequal length beats. This sort of became a trademark of his, and he called that Bulgarian rhythm in his style. Then at the end of Bartok's life, he actually lived in the United States. Actually, his first summer in the US he spent in Vermont. He was a sort of self-imposed exile from Nazi Hungary. And one thing that's sort of like a sad missed occasion of history is that even though he was fascinated by all kinds of folk music, and not even just Southeastern European folk music, but eventually North African folk music and Far Asian folk music, he, in living in the Upper West Side of New York City, he never really, at the end of his life, picked up on the local music scene there and incorporated that. So I decided to do that, since he'd forgotten to. And I wrote a little 12-bar blues in sort of Bartok's Bulgarian style, and it's Bela's Blues.
This is my adorable husband. And we have the immense privilege of living in a tiny little village in the northern part of the state. The gorgeous view of Camel's Hump, which is one of the higher mountains in the area. And I have the exceptional privilege of teaching toddlers how to walk on logs. That's my job. I get to play with the kids every day. And we have a little loop in the woods. We take the old dog, we take the new puppy, we take the little itty bitty kids. They're like 1.5, 2 years old. And I hold them, and they walk over the logs, and they're this high off the ground, and then they're this high, and then they're this high off the ground. And we learn so much from walking on a log in the woods. We learn balance, we learn trust, we learn to make corrections as we go. Whoa, right? We learn how to catch ourselves. Just 2 days ago, our 2.5-year-old little friend got up on a log and walked 100% by herself just because she wanted to. It was so great. But on these walks in the woods, we meet our friends, and they become real friends to these kids and to us. The shelf fungi on the side of a rotting birch log. The pileated woodpecker chips that you see at the bottom of the ground, and you look up until you find way up high, where has the pileated been pecking today? You hear the winter wren calling in the woods. What is that bird? It goes on and on. It's like this big. And you can hear it for like 1/4 of a mile. Why are all the red F's on this drizzly day pointing in the same direction? Why is this fern growing here but not here on the other side of the trail? What is different? What is the same? And as we move through the woods together and we see these new friends and we come to cherish them, and we step over that same root every day, or we climb over that same log that to these kids comes up to here. I don't know how they do it. That becomes their world, that becomes their community, that becomes real people to them. And that song that you kids sang, like I was, and the hills are alive, right? Because these really are, if you're in Vermont for the glorious days of summer, or if you're here year-round, my wish for you is that you have friends in the woods that you go and visit every day. Friends made of trees, friends made of fungi, friends made of ferns, friends made of the leaves that are changing as they rot beneath the snails that we didn't step on in Bennington this morning. Wow, you got big snails down here. It's so cool. So my hope is that we can come together and we can make enormous changes and find pleasure in the small things that don't cost fossil fuels to enjoy and appreciate. Thank you.
One concern I had when I started this project, I knew I would have to recycle a lot of music because I'm not going to learn a full program every week. So I wanted to be sure there was at least something that would guarantee each concert had its own special thing, in addition to the local collaborations. So I came up with the idea of including on every concert a sonata by the Baroque composer Domenico Scarlatti. And there are 251, now 252 towns and cities in Vermont. So I chose the Scarlatti sonatas for the very important reason that he wrote enough of them. He wrote 555, in fact, so I like to tell people when I'm done here, I'm going to do California. But then to personalize them and to sort of give it this little sort of 251 connection, I do a little intro to each sonata based on what are called in the jazz world 2-5-1 progressions. So I'll be doing that. And then leading into this sonata, most of the Scarlatti sonatas, they're very flashy. They're showpieces. He was a phenomenal keyboard player, and they're real show-off pieces. Every now and then, he has this like incredibly introspective, poignant mood that he gets into, and that's what's going to happen today. Which I have no control over, right? It's just sonata number 32, because we're here in the 32nd concert, but yeah. Scarlatti was an exact contemporary of J.S. Bach, the most famous and sort of most celebrated Baroque composer. And you know, as I look over the program, I'm struck that almost every composer on the program, with the exception of just a couple, have one thing in common, which is that they never got on an airplane, you know. And yet somehow they managed to have rich and fulfilling lives. One thing that I always try to remember to say at these concerts is that since my wife and I decided to stop flying anywhere, and since we've been going all over Vermont on this little tour, we don't feel any sense of deprivation at all, you know, because one thing that's true about the towns of Vermont, which maybe seems normal if you're from around here, but which is not really that common, is that every town really has its town identity and has a sense of community, and one or sometimes several village or community or downtown centers where things happen, like here, right? And again, if that sounds obvious, I mean, we're coming here from 10 years in Illinois, and there, the towns are really just these places on the map, and you know, you're in one that's like, oh, this town, you know, the cornfield's on the left, and the soybean field is on the right, but in the next town, you know, the soybean field is on the left, and I mean, that's kind of the amount of character and local distinction that you get in a lot of places. And here it's just really so special that people have worked very hard, sort of against the odds and against the sort of giant economic and social forces to maintain a real sense of community and diversity of these communities. And they're also just geographically so different. You know, the valleys and the mountains and the streams and the lakes. So I just, you know, if you just, you don't have to go to Cancun, you know, it's just amazing what we have here. And just a joy to be able to see it all and to celebrate it. So I think about that with Bach in particular, because when he was in his first job as a court composer in the south of Germany, he heard that one of his idols, an older composer, was sort of giving his retirement concerts. Dietrich Buxtehude, this great organist and composer, in the north of Germany, about 250 miles away. So he applied for leave from his job to take a few weeks to go hear these concerts. And he needed a few weeks because, and this wasn't just because he was a young person without a lot of means, the only really good way to get there, and you can identify this if you know Vermont in mud season, he had to walk. So he walked 250 miles each way to go hear these concerts. And I'm not saying we have to do that on a regular basis. We're happy to drive from town to town. But just again, so many things that we do that seem sort of an essential part of modern life, they're not essential. They're ordinary. They're customary, but not necessarily things that if you stop doing them, your life will be any less rich. So I'm going to play this partita of J.S. Bach. Partita is like many Baroque pieces. It's just a collection of movements, each of them in a different dance style. So every movement, the Allemande, the Corrente, the Allemande is a German dance, the Corrente is a fast Italian dance, the Sarabande is a very slow dance that the Spanish actually brought back from the Caribbean. It's actually a Caribbean dance. And then the jig is of course a fast Irish dance. So they all have their national character, but when we hear them nowadays, sort of 300 years later, and with so much more music that we know now and that's so easy to listen to, they have this unfortunate sense of sameness. Instead of this sort of crazy international multicultural diversity that Bach's audience would have been experiencing, it's like, oh yeah, a whole bunch of music by the same dead white composer. And sort of to recapture some of this sort of freshness and contrast, what I'm going to do is play the Bach movements as written, but I'm going to interweave them with American dances of a different era and somewhat different style to sort of try to recapture some of that freshness. So I call it a double suite of Bach's Partita No. 1 and American dances. You're very kind. I try to include Vermont music whenever possible, and a piece I've been playing a lot because it's lovely and gorgeous, and also, to be honest, because with all of the demands of this project and my regular life, it was a piece that I could easily learn because it's also wonderfully simple. And this is a piece by Brandon composer, Yves Beglarian. it's inspired by a Leonard Bernstein song. And when she wrote it, she was thinking of this anecdote that apparently when Bernstein was a young freelance musician, not yet the world-famous conductor and composer, one of his jobs in New York was accompanying dance classes for Agnes de Mille. And she fired him because he couldn't help sticking in these odd measures of 5/8 and 7/8 in her dance classes. So she does that in this piece as well. Yeah, so there's a very important thing that happens in every concert that almost didn't happen now because I just spaced out. But at every concert, we invite the point person who had the most to do with making the concert happen. Fill in the town. So we would now like to invite Anne DeLivo back up. And while she's coming in, I just want to also not only thank her, but thank Pam Corso and the Earth Matters, the entire Southern Vermont Arts Center for being so generous and letting this happen.
Feel free to donate on your way out if you have not had a chance to on the way in. I'm sure your money will go to a great cause.
Right, so as I said, the most important thing you can do is to talk about it. Really, I mean, people who know what they're talking about tell me this. The second most important thing you can do is make trouble. And then the third most important thing you can do is support groups that are making trouble. So hope that you can do that.
So I'd just like to thank David again for a wonderful concert. I really, really enjoyed the Bartok, especially. I'm a great fan of Bartok. And I just wanted to give him a small gift. It's actually the Drawdown book that Chris talked about earlier on, so I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much.
Which one it is?
Yeah, now that we're in Southern Vermont, we got
This is one here, right?
Okay, we're gonna take a vote. We the first, second, third, fourth up from the bottom.
Right? That's what David said. Okay.
So just one last thing. Don't forget to go back and get the cookies, and the sparkling water is actually in the bar area if you just go along the lobby where the toilets are, beyond the toilets, and that's where the cookies and the water is. Thank you so much for coming today. And I did want to say, I've been looking at our Earth Matters banner down here. I don't know if you can all see it. It was something that we did in 2017, right when we first formed, and it went down to Washington, D.C. for the People's Climate March in 2017, and they carried along the streets there, and it's been with us ever since. And this is the first chance I've actually had to read every single thing that is on this banner. It's fascinating. So if you get a chance at the end of the concert, come down and have a read. A lot of the comments are from students at BBA, our local high school. And ironically enough, today I was listening to my Spotify on the radio in the car, my EV, I should say, coming home. And I heard this song, and I just thought, I really would like to say this. So, heal the world, make it a better place for you and for me and the entire human race. So please save the planet for our children and for the 7 generations to come. Thank you very much.
So I'll maybe play us out with just one more piece. This piece is an homage. Is it everybody's birthday today? If it is, I can't see. But anyway, this is a piece that I wrote for Martin Luther King's birthday. It's called Happy Birthday, Martin, and it weaves together a whole bunch of pre-existing tunes. And I just, you know, the work of the Civil Rights Movement, which is, of course, is very much unfinished, but which was made such dramatic changes in the 60s, and it just reminds me, I don't remember who said this, but I think about it in the face of the climate crisis, that with various social justice goals, they're obviously impossible until they're inevitable. So with that, I will now play Happy Birthday, Martin.